Welcome and welcome back to the What's Up Girlfriend podcast. My name is Leigha Chrstine and I am your host. Now let's get into this week's episode. One thing I'm always going to do is I'm going to give West Michigan her flowers when she deserves them. Today is one of those days. It may be the end of January. We are in the butt crack of winter, but today it is sunny. I will say it's partly cloudy, but I look out the window and I see blue skies. I love when the sun decides to come out, especially during the winter. I will even say this past week, we've had a decent amount of sun. It really just feels like a treat. You guys, I'm genuinely having so much fun with this whole podcast adventure. I never thought it would be for me. I've said this, but it's been so fun and I'm really enjoying it. I find it's super easy for me to do. It's super easy for me to sit here and chat. And it's also super easy for me to edit and get this footage out. So let's start with our what's new. I have 3 what's new topics today. The first is that I officially finished my portfolio for UGC. I have been working on that for probably about 2 weeks, not every single day, but I was slowly starting to get it together. I had a portfolio before, but it needed to be updated because the past 6 or 7 months, you guys know, I've absolutely gone nuts with the UGC, so I had to update my examples on there, and I just wanted to make it look just better. I don't know, the other portfolio was ugly, to be honest, and I'm super happy with how it turned out. I feel like it looks very professional. I'm super proud of all of the work that I've done with UGC the past few months, and now if I have a brand reach out to me, I will be able to easily direct them to my portfolio so they can see examples of my work. And then I will also be able to now do more outreach. Not gonna lie, I have not done much, if any, outreach with UGC. Everything I have done has been through the TikTok Creative Challenge, which I talked about in the last video about paying off my credit card debt. And then outside of that, all of the partnerships and things I've done have been inbound, meaning the brands have reached out to me directly. So I've said, we are diversifying this year, and a big piece of that was getting my portfolio updated. I also have a rate card. So all that means is if a brand reaches out to me and they're like, hey, what are your rates? Usually what I will do is give them some ranges, or I will ask what their budget is. But regardless, it's just the fact that I am now prepared for when those situations arise. I can just link them right to my portfolio and send them over the rate card, and then we're good to go. Next on my list of what's new, I got short nails. So I got my nails done on Friday, and they were a hot mess because, you guys, I'm a nail biter. I have been a nail biter since I was a child, and my mom did everything she could to try to get me to stop biting my nails, and it's for sure related to anxiety and stress, because whenever I would be in a good mental space, and this is just true throughout my life, when I'm in a good mental space, things aren't stressing me out, my nails are fine. I would go through spurts of growing my nails out, and then whenever I would start feeling not great or anxious or stressed or nervous, I would just bite off all my nails. So getting my nails done helps me not be a nail biter, because I'm I spent money on these and they look nice and I want to keep them looking nice. However, you guys know the past week with just TikTok ban bullcrap was super stressful, and I started picking at my nails. I had them for a little bit anyways, so I wasn't too worried about it. But I picked the crap out of them and they looked absolutely terrible. So I had to get them done on Friday. And for whatever reason, I've been seeing people with short nails, and I was like, those actually look really nice and clean. And I decided to get short nails myself, and I'm obsessed with them. So I went with red, partially because I'm I don't know, it feels seasonal with Valentine's Day in a couple weeks. I don't know. I'm not really big on stuff like that, but whatever. I got red. I am obsessed with this specific shade and color of red. And then we did short, and they're pretty much square, but I had her round the corners so they didn't look too blocky, because a while ago I got square shaped nails and I felt like they looked just like blocks on my fingers. I don't know. I personally think almond And I'll even say kind of like coffin. I like the tapered look. Typically, I feel like they like make your hands and your fingers look longer and like more feminine. So that's why I personally typically steer away from square nails, because I feel like they just aren't always the most flattering for me personally. But with me going short like this, I feel like these turned out super cute. So I don't know if short nails are like a thing now, but like I said, I've been seeing short nails, just noticing them, like not even people like, oh, look at my short nails, but I've just been noticing them on other people's hands, and I thought they looked really nice. So we did short nails, and I'm absolutely loving them. I don't know if I'm gonna keep them, or we'll see how I'm feeling in a few weeks when it's time to get my nails done again, if we stay short or if we go back long. And the last thing on my what's new list is that I vlogged this week. So I'm not typically a huge person with vlogging, but I did get the DJI Pocket Osmo 3. I think that's the name of it. I got that for Christmas from Brandon, and it is, in my opinion, it's meant to be used as a vlogging camera. Obviously, you can use it for whatever you want, any sort of content. What I find though is for like short form content that I'm posting on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube Shorts, my phone is just still the most convenient thing, because I don't have to transfer footage. I can film it on my phone, I can edit it on my phone, and then I can post it. Versus the DJI Pocket Osmo 3, I can film on there, but then I have to transfer the footage to my phone, and I think that extra step makes me not want to use it for short form content. But with vlogging, since that is long form content, like I'm going to have to edit that on my laptop anyways. So that's what I used. And I found that it was super easy to just use and pull it out and flip the screen and all that good stuff. So I basically vlogged. I thought it was just going to be like a day in the life vlog, but I kind of vlogged a little bit like over 3 days this past week. So that will be up on Wednesday this week. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah. And that completes our what's new list. So let's go ahead and jump into the topic of today's episode, which is things you should know before you decide to train for a marathon. So before I start, I will give just a little bit of my personal background. If you guys follow me on my other platforms, you know that I am now a 3-time marathoner. What? Never thought I'd run even one marathon. And then somehow last year I ran 2 marathons. So my first marathon I ran was the Long Beach Marathon in Long Beach, California. That was in 2023, October of 2023. And I guess I loved it, right? Because then I was like, well, let's do another one. And that's when I decided that I was going to do the Chicago Marathon. So a little backstory, I wanted to do the Chicago Marathon, which, if you're unaware, the Chicago Marathon is one of the world major marathons. I believe there are now 7 world major marathons, because they just added Sydney, Australia. So there is Chicago, New York, Tokyo. Am I making that up? No, that's right? Tokyo? Yes. Berlin. Did I say? Oh my gosh. This is terrible. Not me having to look up the world major marathons. Okay, here we go. Tokyo. Okay, I was right with Tokyo. Tokyo, Boston, London, Berlin, Chicago, New York City, and then they most recently added Sydney, Australia. So there are 7 world major marathons. Before I even ran my first marathon, the Long Beach Marathon, I was like, I want to run the Chicago Marathon. I don't know why. It just was an idea that popped in my head. My brother lives in Chicago, and we were like, this would be so fun to do together. So when you want to run a world major marathon, there's a few different ways that you can participate. So you can either be a time qualifier, and that's like, okay, if you run fast enough, then you can kind of get a guaranteed entry. You can apply through a lottery, which means you can hope that you're randomly chosen, or you can raise money and fundraise for a charity to like earn your bib, right? Because charities get a specific amount of bibs. So like, let's say you want to run for a specific organization. That organization has like 50 bibs that they get for participants. In order to earn that bib, you have to fundraise, let's say, I don't know, $1,200 or $1,700. It really just depends. So the first year, my brother and I, we both applied for the Chicago Marathon, and neither of us got in. We did not get chosen. So I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. I'll just run a local marathon, which at the time, Long Beach was local for me. And I'm honestly really happy that that's how it worked out, because now that I have done a local marathon and then I've done 2 world major marathons, I am happy that for my first marathon, I didn't have to deal with all of the logistics of a world major marathon, because no matter what, there are logistics that go into race day, and we'll talk about that later. But having your first marathon be a local marathon, I think is so worth it, because it's already like a big day, because it's your first time running that distance and you have nerves and you don't fully know what to expect. So I'm happy that I didn't have to deal with the other logistics on top of all of those things for my first race. So I ran the Long Beach Marathon in 2023, loved it, and I was like, I want to do Chicago. So I applied for the Chicago Marathon, and again, I did not get selected. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm just going to run for charity. So I ran with Girls on the Run Chicago, and I had to fundraise I think it was $1,700 in order to run the Chicago Marathon. So if you guys remember, I was like, please help me fundraise for this, because if the thing is, when you do a fundraiser with these charities, if you don't raise that amount of money by the due date or by the deadline, then it's your responsibility to make up for the difference, right? So let's say I fundraised $1,000 and the goal was $1,700, I would have then been responsible for that additional $700. And for the record, I did donate to my own fundraiser. Because even if let's say you apply through the charity and you do get selected, you still have to pay, I believe it's $240 to run. That's for Chicago. All of them are going to be different. So don't take what I say as truth. You got to do your own research. But I believe that's the number. It's either $230 or $240 or something like that. So, and I think that's how much I donated to my own fundraiser, because I was like, if I did get chosen through the lottery, I would have had to pay that much anyways. So I was like, why not just donate that to my own fundraiser? So the Chicago Marathon was a planned marathon last year in 2024. And, I started training for that in May. And then I think it was September, Strava reached out to me and they were like, hey, are you by chance interested in running the New York City Marathon? And I was like, whoa. And I looked to see when it was, because I knew that they were close, but I didn't know how close. And I believe they were 3 weeks apart. And I was like, can I physically do this? I would love to go to New York and be able to experience this, but can I physically do this? Can my body handle this? And I was like, you know what? YOLO, let's do it. Let's run the Chicago Marathon, and then 3 weeks later run the New York City Marathon. I really was looking at it as a once in a lifetime thing, because I also knew that once I was done training for the Chicago Marathon, I didn't know when the next time would be that I would be training for a marathon, because I knew that I wanted to take a break. Marathon training, and we're going to talk about this, marathon training is so demanding on your body physically, but then also just on your life and your schedule. And I was a bit burnt out this year from marathon training. And I was like, you know what? After Chicago, we're taking a break from the marathon distance. Let's focus on shorter distance. Let's focus on other things in our lives. And then Strava reached out to me and I was like, okay, I know I'm going to take a break from this distance. I don't know when I will have this opportunity again. So why not just go for it? So that's how I ended up running the New York City Marathon last November 2024. So that's a little bit of my background. So now if you're someone that's like, you know what, 2025, I want to run a marathon. If you've seen just all of the posts on social media and all people running marathons and just running in general, you may be feeling super motivated and inspired to do it yourself. And to that, I say, go for it, but also go into this process at least knowing a little bit what to expect. I think there's value in just experiencing things for yourself. I don't think we can always fully prepare ourselves for everything. If you watch this YouTube video or if you listen to this podcast and you're going to know everything that's going to happen. No, there's still going to be things that happen that you weren't expecting. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that's life and that's normal. And we should welcome that. But I also wanted to share a few things before you fully commit yourself to this process so that you kind of know at least a little bit what you're in for. So before you decide to train for a marathon, the first thing you should be aware of are the costs that go into it. That includes things like shoes, gear, your nutrition, any potential travel, food, and then also just the cost of race entry. So like I said, for the world major marathons, they are not cheap. Even if you do get selected in the lottery, the Chicago Marathon still costs like $230, $240 in order to participate. Now, if you're running a local race, your race entry will most likely be cheaper, but it's still something to keep in mind because I have realized a lot of people didn't know that in order to run these races, like, yes, you have to pay for them. It's not free. You don't just show up and like, okay, everyone starts at the starting line. No, there are costs associated to be able to run in order to get your bib and all of that. Shoes and other gear are kind of obvious, but there's just certain things you may not realize that you might need. And you can keep it as simple as possible. I'm not saying you need to go out and buy every single accessory that there is for running. You can keep it simple and just have a good pair of shoes, some way that you can track your runs, which you can obviously do like with a watch, like a Garmin or an Apple Watch. But I do know a lot of people that just track their runs right on their phone, like using Nike Run Club. I feel like run gear is a bit of a rabbit hole. And if you get carried away, you can start thinking that you need all of these extra things. And it's not always true. Like, sure, they may be able to benefit you, like something like a run vest, for example, but you can get cheap ones off of Amazon. The one that I started with is a Camelback running vest. I think it's actually technically for biking, but it has worked perfectly fine for me with running. And I got it from REI and it was on sale. And every time I look up that run vest, it's always on sale. So don't think that you need the most expensive running vest. I did end up getting the Salomon running vest. That one is pricey. I believe it's like $145 for a run vest. And it's very nice. It's very high quality. Do I think it's worth $145? I mean, I'm one of those people that I don't really think anything is worth the price that we're putting on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I'm like, I know it didn't cost $145 to make this vest. Like, it probably cost less than half of that. So when I say like, is it worth it? Like, yeah, I think it's worth it, but like, is anything worth the price it is in this year of 2025? I don't know. But anyways, I know like Amazon has a lot of like more affordable run vests. So if you're someone that does want to run vests, like start there. You don't need to go like with the most expensive one right away. Same thing with watches. I got my Garmin back like 2 years ago, I think, because I was getting more serious with running. But if you already have something like an Apple Watch, like that should do the trick. The issue that I had with Apple Watches was that the battery was not lasting long enough. So, and I had to charge that thing every single night versus with my Garmin, I have to charge this thing like maybe once a week, like maybe once every like 10 days. So the battery life is absolutely amazing on my Garmin. I have the Garmin Forerunner 955. And that was my issue with the Apple Watch, is that it didn't stay charged. And it would be like the middle of the day and it'd be like 10% battery remaining. So that's the one downfall that I personally have noticed with Apple Watches. But again, I don't think like if you are like, I'm going to run a marathon, I don't think you have to then go and buy a brand new fitness tracking watch. You know, hey, if you have the funds for it and if that's what you want to do, amazing. But also if you don't have the funds for it, don't let something like that stop you, because you can always just like use your phone and use what you have in order to track your runs. Oh, and another thing that can go into the cost of training for a marathon is if you are going to be purchasing or following some sort of training plan, or if you're going to be hiring a coach. So those are also just expenses that can add up because you're going to be training for this thing for a few months. You know, I started training for the Chicago Marathon in May and the race wasn't until October. So what is that? Like 5 months of training. Now, when I ran my first half marathon in 2021, I used the Nike Run Club half marathon training plan and it was free. And they also now have a full marathon training plan. So before you go and start spending money on training plans or hiring a coach, which I am a coach and I do see value in hiring a coach, but I also know like that being able to hire a coach is absolutely a luxury. So if you're someone that's like, that is not in my budget, please know that there are plenty of free resources out there. And what I would recommend is if you want to use like a free training plan out there, take a look at a few of them and maybe pick like your top 3 and sort of cross-reference them, right? So if you find the Nike 18-week full marathon training plan, and then maybe you find 2 other ones, just like try to compare them almost like side by side and compare what the differences are, because some of them are going to incorporate speed work. Some of them are going to be a higher running volume than others. In my experience, I feel like the Nike marathon training plan is perfect for beginners. It's not a ton of volume, meaning you're not going to be running a whole bunch of miles during the week. I mean, it's still a lot because you're training for a marathon, but in comparison to other plans out there that might have you running like 40, 50 plus miles per week, the Nike marathon training plan is not as high in volume in comparison to other training plans. So I really think it's perfect for beginners. Potential travel. So that's really big if you will be traveling for your marathon. And that's why I think it's super helpful to do a local race for your first one. Like I said, I did the Long Beach Marathon for my first marathon, and I lived 15 minutes away from the start line. So I didn't have to get a hotel. I didn't have to fly anywhere. I didn't have to drive. You know what I mean? I was able to sleep in my own apartment that night in my own bed and come home to my own apartment that night. You know, it was just very easy logistically. So if you are worried about cost, instead of doing a world major or just a marathon that you're going to have to travel for in general, see if there are local races that are nearby so that you don't have to worry too much about hotels or flights. And then lastly, when it comes to costs, something you really have to think about is nutrition. And that means not only groceries, because you're going to have to eat a lot in order to support the amount of running that you're doing. In order to fuel your body appropriately, you're going to have to just simply be eating a lot. And so it is like a lot of groceries and stuff, but it's also your things like your gels and your electrolytes. So for my long runs, for example, I remember for my first marathon, I would have to go and restock on my gels. I would go to Dick's Sporting Goods or REI or wherever I was getting my stuff from and stock up on my gels. I'm like, dang, this is $40 a week to stock up on all these gels or however much I was spending, but it adds up. You know what I mean? So that's another thing to think about. I know not everyone loves gels and whatever. And some people prefer to eat real food during their run, or they'll eat candy, which you can do that. That's totally fine. I personally think that gels are convenient though. Do they always taste the best? No, but that's not the point. It's not the point to have something that tastes amazing on your run. The point is just to make sure that you are fueled correctly and appropriately and that you can get yourself through a 3-hour long run. The second thing you're going to want to think about before you decide to train for a marathon is the time commitment. Marathon training is a massive time commitment. It is truly like having an additional part-time or even a full-time job depending on how much you're running. And this time commitment is not just for a couple weeks or for a month. This is months of training that you have to be prepared for and that you have to have the time to be able to commit to it. I will never forget, there was a time when I was training for the Chicago Marathon, and it was a random Tuesday, and I was happy because I only had an 8-mile run to do that day. Your perception of what a long run is going to change. Your perception of how much time you're committing to running also is going to change. And you do need to consider how fast of a runner you are, because, for example, someone who can easily maintain a 7 or 8 minute mile pace for a 5-mile run versus someone like me who maintains a little bit higher, a 10 to 11 minute per mile, it's going to take us completely different times to run a 5-mile run or 8-mile run. And these are runs that you have to do during the week, during the work week. So if you're someone who has long commutes for work, if you have kids, if you just work long hours in general, just know you're going to most likely have to wake up super early to get your runs in, or you're going to have to do those runs after work. If you get a midday break and you're able to get in some miles, that's awesome. I do know some people who they will use their lunch breaks for their runs. But it is a massive time commitment. It's also a commitment on the weekends because that's usually when you're going to do your long run. And you're also so exhausted after your long run. So if you're someone who likes to do things on the weekend, just know you may have to run 10 plus miles, 15 plus miles, 18 plus miles. And when you're done after those runs, like at least for me, I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to come home and shower and just stay on the couch the whole rest of the day. I didn't want to go out and do things and go out to eat or go hang out or whatever. I wanted to completely rot on the couch. It really is a huge lifestyle commitment. So that is just something you need to be mentally prepared for before you start training. At the beginning, it might not feel that crazy or that different, especially if you're someone who is already active. But once you get into the thick of it and you are doing 15 plus long runs on the weekends, it does catch up with you and it's exhausting. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, it's an exhausting thing to train for a marathon. It's amazing and it's so worth the experience, but it is exhausting. Two things can be true. Another thing to consider is when your race is, because depending on what time of year your race is, meaning if you do a fall marathon or if you do a spring marathon, that is going to determine when you're doing your training. So if you're doing a fall marathon, a marathon that's in October or November or December, you're going to be doing your training during the summer. That means running in heat and humidity. And you guys, oh my gosh, when it is 90 degrees and 90% humidity, sure, you can run inside on the treadmill. But I'm just saying, if you're someone who lives somewhere where it does get super hot or super humid, that's what you're going to be training in. Ways to combat that is to try to run as early as possible. Try to not run when the sun is at its peak, but it's not always avoidable. So if you're gonna run a fall race, you're gonna be training during the summer. If you're running a spring race, then you're going to be training during the winter. Now, if you don't live in Michigan or if you don't live in the Midwest where, you get a whole bunch of snow and it's really cold, and that might not matter to you. You might have really great running temperatures. But if you do live somewhere where you have winter, you have cold, you have snow, and you are planning on a spring marathon, that means your training is going to be done during the winter. Again, bundle up. You know what I mean? Like, wear the gloves, wear the winter running gear. And I know a lot of people that do choose to just run inside on the treadmill, but just a couple things to consider before you decide, which marathon you want to run. Now, this next point is for people who are not just runners and they may enjoy doing other forms of physical activity. People who like to strength train, people who maybe are dancers, people who do just literally anything else within your free time. Understand that when it comes to training for a marathon, running will now be your primary goal, and the other forms of physical activity that you enjoy doing will move down on your list of priorities. And that's for a couple reasons. Number one, because most of your time is going to running. And number two, you're going to be tired. Running is going to exhaust you, and you're simply just not going to have enough energy to put towards those other forms of physical activity. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but you may just need to do them at a bit of a lower level. So if you're used to like lifting super, super heavy or lifting 5 times per week and doing like a body part split, the way that you lift might have to change so that your body can tolerate that amount of physical activity and still be able to recover and not get injured. So instead of lifting 5 times per week, doing a body part split and lifting as heavy as possible, while you're training for a marathon, that might turn into lifting 3 times per week, doing a full body split, and lifting in a more moderate load range. So instead of lifting at like 90% of your 1 rep max, maybe you're going to be lifting more 50 to 70% of your 1 rep max. I already talked about this a little bit, but again, if you're planning to train and run a marathon, really consider if you're going to do a world major marathon or if you're going to do a local race. I was so happy that I did a local race for my first race because I didn't have to worry about a flight. I didn't have to worry about a hotel, not just the cost of those things, but just the logistics of those things as well. When I did the Chicago Marathon, I was living in Grand Rapids, so luckily I didn't have to fly and I was able to just drive. It's like a 3-hour drive from Grand Rapids, but I did get a hotel the Friday before my race. I do wish, this is a little kind of pro tip, I do wish I would have gotten to Chicago one day earlier, and I wish I would have gotten there on Thursday so that I could have done the expo that first day, because I got to Chicago on Friday and I did a shakeout run with Free People and Hoka, which was so much fun. But I did that on Friday, and then that left me just Saturday to go to the expo and get my bib and do all the fun expo things. But you guys, I was on my feet so much. I think I spent like 3 hours at the expo. And the day before the marathon, I wish I could have had a bit of a more relaxed day and not been walking around all day at the expo. So if you are traveling for a marathon, I would say, and like let's say your race is on Sunday, I would say to plan to get there on Thursday. So you have an extra day. You can do the expo early and then be able to relax the day/night before your marathon. So you're going into race day on fresh legs, feeling rested and ready to go and run a good race. Local marathons, by the way, can still be super fun and big. So don't think like, oh, if I don't do a world major, it's not going to be a big race. There's not going to be a lot of people. That is not the case at all. Long Beach Marathon was still a pretty big race. I believe the year I did it, there was like 18,000 participants. And in comparison, for the Chicago and New York City Marathon, there was between 50 to 55,000 participants. So Long Beach Marathon was like half the size, but there was still so many people there cheering for you. There was just so much fun along the race course. You know, people are handing out food and they're handing out like bananas and oranges and they have the signs. Like there was like the drummers, like I don't know. That was such a fun race. I had an amazing time, and I think it really speaks to the fact that like local marathons can still be so much fun. Just don't count them out, you know? And my last piece of advice, my last words of wisdom when it comes to training for a marathon would be to take the time to learn. Learn about running, learn about pacing and easy runs versus speed work versus long runs. Learn about fueling strategies because that's going to help you perform better and feel better. Of course, you can hire a coach to help you with these things, but there's also so much great information out there on YouTube, of course on, other platforms like Instagram and TikTok. And I would say like it's going to just benefit you in the long run, no pun intended, to really learn and understand about what you're doing and why you shouldn't always run as fast as humanly possible, because doing your easy base work is actually going to help you get more fit and be able to run faster in the long run. I think why I've always been drawn to running is because number one, it absolutely humbles me. Things like strength training just really come to me naturally. I've always been strong. I've been lifting since I was like 13 years old, first of all. But lifting just comes naturally to me. I get it. I understand it. Yes, I have to work hard to get stronger. No, of course. But running humbles me in a total different way. I've always been someone who excels at strength and power things and not necessarily at endurance. Now, that doesn't mean I've let that stop me, right? Like, I think that's exactly the reason why I've been drawn to running, is because it does challenge me and it does humble me. And I truly feel like a student whenever I'm training for a race or just whenever I'm running in general. It helps me slow down. And I think if you go into this training block for your marathon, really thinking like, okay, I'm going to remain a student. I'm going to remain humble. I think you will just appreciate and respect the sport of running so much more. Those are my main tips. Those are my main pieces of advice. And I think what I will just like leave you with is that race day is one of the most amazing, magical, adrenaline rush things. I absolutely love race day. You are just surrounded by so much positive energy. People are hype. People are excited. Like, we've all been training and building up to this one day. And the vibes on race day are just like nothing else I've ever experienced. And that was true for Long Beach Marathon. That was true for Chicago Marathon. That was true for New York City Marathon. I literally got emotional at the start line of the New York City Marathon, they were playing that song, the like, New York, New York. I don't know who sings it or what it's from. It's probably from a movie. But I started crying. Like, I just got chills, like thinking about it, envisioning myself there on race day. It was one of the most beautiful things. Same thing for Chicago. I was emotional because like me and my brother trained for this together. I love the city of Chicago. I always talk about how I just feel so connected to it. Maybe just because my brother lives there, first of all, but also because like Chicago was that place that we always went to, you know, when I was younger. Like, let's go to Chicago for the weekend, or because it's, you know, it's only a 3-hour drive from Grand Rapids. So just being in that city felt so nostalgic in a way. And I don't know, Long Beach Marathon, that was my first marathon. So I was just so proud of myself that I committed to this process and I trained for it and I did it. And here I am, like about to go run for over 4 hours. Like, oh, I don't know. It's really beautiful. And I think training for a marathon does so much for your confidence. It does so much for like your self-perception and like self-efficacy, meaning like truly believing that you can do it. You know what I mean? Like it's amazing. It really is one of the most amazing experiences. And I definitely want to encourage you, if you're someone that's like, I think I want to do this. I want to encourage you to do it. I really think it's one of those things that if you even have the thought of, I think I could run a marathon one day, or I kind of want to run a marathon. I think if you even have that seed of thought in your brain, then you should absolutely go for it. You know, I've had people ask me like, what made you want to run a marathon? Like, why did you want to do this? And it's literally that. It's because I had that thing in my brain that was like, I think I kind of want to do this. I think I could do this. And I was like, why not? Like, why not just try, and why not just go for it? That's like honestly how I think a lot about life in general is why not? Also, YOLO, you only live once. If you have the thought of wanting to do something and wanting to go for something, I really think you have to act on it, because if you don't, it's going to be that thing you always think about. And it's going to be that thing that you're like, if I would have just gone for that thing 5 years ago or 3 years ago or 2 years ago, like I still wonder if I could have done it. Don't wonder, just go for it. Like I'm cheering for you. And I just fully believe that, like, if you even, because there's people that don't even have that thought. They don't even like think that it's possible. Like they just 100% are not even considering it. And these actually are like, what I'm kind of talking about and referring to here are like the stages of behavior change in a way. Like there's like the pre-contemplation phase, the contemplation phase, like even if it's just like wanting to improve your health, right? There's people who are not even thinking about the fact that like they should improve their health, right? Like they're not even in like the first phase of behavior change. But then you have pre-contemplation where you're like, I think I should maybe improve my health. And then you have contemplation. And I don't remember all the definitions of the stages of behavior change, but that's kind of the way that I think about it, is that if you're even in like the pre-contemplation phase of thinking you want to go for something, then like just go for it. Just literally just do it. I hope this was helpful. If you guys have any more questions though, or anything else that you're thinking of, or anything I said that maybe sparked an idea or question or whatever, you want to bounce something off of me, then definitely leave a comment down below. I'll be happy to like talk with you guys about this. Marathon training is one of the most challenging, difficult, fun, exciting, terrible, wonderful things. And if you're someone that is thinking about doing it and you have that piece of you that's like, I think I kind of want to do this, then this is your sign to commit to it and do it. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.